Greetings everyone, it's IT2 redoing this video that didn't work the other day because for some reason whenever my power goes out, my computer reboots, whatever happens, it has to update. It resets all of my camera settings, which mutes my microphone for some reason and turns my autofocus on, so I have to reset that. So now it's working. And I was making a video about Magician's Land by Grossman. Finished the trilogy. This one, a little bit disappointing. It wasn't as good as the second book, which is, I give 5 stars and put it in my favorites. So it kind of like started out mediocre, it went up to fantastic, and went back down again. But it's not bad. Like, the whole trilogy is still great because you can watch the TV show alongside it and compare the differences because it's totally different. Kind of like, oh, what was the other one that was, The Expanse was pretty close. If I think of it, I'll tell you in a second. There's a TV show that basically you get more than just the books if you watch the TV show and the books, because it's like in some places they hit the same points, in some places it's totally different. Three Body Problem's pretty similar too, as far as I don't know if it's like there's just the first book or just the whole trilogy, because I don't remember a lot of that stuff. Anyway. The last book I really liked because of Julia. Julia was like raped by a god, a fox god or something like that. And they introduced this new character, not Polly, what was her name? Poppy. She was like an Australian magician. And she ended up marrying Josh in Fillory. Fillory is like the Narnia magical world that they all live in. And Quentin, the main character, who is like the biggest fan of Narnia, it gets kicked out of Narnia. Or Fillory. He gets kicked out of Fillory. So then Josh and Poppy take over as the king and queen. Alice died, of course, in the book 1, I think. Right? So then, kind of reminded me of, like, the incels. The way, like, fat guys or ugly guys like girls. So it's like, they like them the most, and they have the most honest love and feelings of like emotion or whatever, but like that's people that have no chance with the girl. So it's like Quentin loves Fillory truly, and he's the one guy that can't stay there, so they kick him out. It really kind of like made sense. I mean, it didn't make sense, it just kind of hit me in the feels. Anyway, it starts out like a detective kind of, or a heist kind of story. Him and this new girl they introduced. Like, why are you introducing a new girl in book 3? I didn't like that. Her name was Plum. She was like the great-granddaughter, the granddaughter of like the Chatwins. So she's like the last surviving Chatwin. She doesn't even have the same last name. She doesn't want anybody to know she's a Chatwin. And she's not really integral to the story until like at one point they need a Chatwin for something. So it's kind of like a waste of time to introduce a new character. And like in the first book, Quentin becomes almost godlike. All the magicians become like. That's another thing, like in the TV show, he's the only one that really cares about Fillory. But in the book, it says like all the magicians are like, pretty much anybody that goes to Breakbills is a big fan of the Fillory books, and they all love it. So, also Penny. Penny is totally different. Like, he's barely even in these books. In book 1, he gets his hands cut off, I think, and he kind of disappears. And they don't talk about traveling or being able to travel between worlds and teleporting and all that stuff. That's all the TV show is all about. He's just a traveler. I thought I remember the first time I watched the TV show that he couldn't even do magic. He just like was traveling and he could read minds. Then he gets his hands cut off and he gets them put back on. But in this book, he gets them replaced with this golden, like mechanical prosthetic hands. It makes him faster at doing spells. Just like the Beast from Fillory, he has like an extra finger so he can do better spell work with 6 fingers. So he starts like a cult, kind of like a group of magicians in the Netherlands that are doing something like they become librarians, and then they kind of work to prevent the worlds from collapsing or manage it somehow. I don't even know what they're doing. I didn't explain it very well. But he's like a master magician. He's really good at magic. But in the TV show, my favorite character in the TV show is the female librarian, which isn't in the book at all. So, I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, the book picked up at the point where Rupert Chatwin, they find his old book, and they start talking about when he first went to Fillory and how the whole thing with Martin Chatwin getting sexually abused by the guy that wrote the Fillory books, and his whole taking part in it and everything is really cool. And then at the end, he goes back to Fillory, and Fillory's like dying, and he has to like save it. And he creates this magical land. Oh, that's the thing with the heist. They find Rupert Chatwin's suitcase or something. This talking crow had hired him to, with a bunch of other magicians, to get this suitcase. They didn't know what was in it. There's like a dagger that Julia's friend Asmodeus immediately steals and takes, because she was going to kill that fox god because she watched him rape her. So the dagger is able to kill a god. So she took the dagger and left with it. And there's a book that's Rupert's story, and then there's a spell. That's the three things that are in the suitcase. So the spell was a spell to create a whole world, and it's a really complicated spell. He does everything correctly, but he didn't have enough intention into it or something. So he just made like a mirror copy of this apartment room that he was doing the spell in with Plum. Him and Plum are doing all this. And somehow this room made like Alice came back somehow. She was in there. And then he gets a different spell where he can create a body out of, because now that he knows where she is, he has this, he like takes all the atoms in the room and he makes a body for her to live in out of it, and he brings her back from being a Niffin. It's really complicated, but it turns out she didn't like it. Like, she enjoyed being a Niffin, and that's like a magical what do you call it, like a genie kind of, like she just floats around. She's blue and can do pretty much anything. And she says like when she was a Niffin, she could have killed anybody, but she just didn't want to because it was a waste of her time. Like, she wasn't even, everybody was beneath her. She was flying around the whole world watching people and like going through other dimensions and other worlds, and like how with so much power. Like, now she's back in a human body again. She's going to have to die again. And like she talks about when she burned to death to become a Niffin, it was so painful. Now she's got to relive all that. It's like horrible. Being a human is horrible, apparently. But then she finally kind of like psychologically, they kind of fix her a little bit, but she's still pretty fucked up at the end. And she's helping them like try to save Fillory as Fillory's falling apart. And then he has to, spoiler alert, Elliot and the others that are kings and queens, they come back to Earth, and then as Fillory's about to die, like it's on its last legs, he teleports back to Fillory. And then he realizes he has to kill Ember and Umber, the gods of Fillory. And then when he does that, their power goes into him, and he uses his power to like sew everything back together and like recreate Fillory a little bit differently than before. Because Fillory's like a flat, like a kind of like Ring World, or no, Discworld, but Terry Pratchett. It's like a flat land on the back of a turtle, and there's a flip side. On the other side, there's a different world, kind of. That's where Julia went and became a dryad, and she came back and she was helping them. And she ended up becoming like 3/4 of a god herself at the end of the book. But then he like released the power of being a god. He's like, no, I don't want it anymore. And he let it go. And it doesn't really say like where that power went. And then he did the land creating spell again. He created a magician's land again. And they went exploring it. They didn't know where it was. And it started out on Earth. And then he sees the cozy horse coming from Fillory. He's like, that doesn't make sense. How is he here? And the cozy horse is like this big velveteen giant horse. Like in the books, the Fillory books, he would always like, at the end of the quest, he would pick him up and he would take him off to some other adventure or something like that. So he realized he's created a bridge, a world between Earth and Fillory, so now they don't have to like go through into the Netherlands and these portals and like use buttons or any kind of teleporting or anything like that. They could just take this walk. I guess I don't know how long this bridge would be, if it's as big as a whole world or what, but anyway, that's how it ended. Like, Fillory and Earth are connected by this land he created. It's kind of a touching story, but where did that power go? The god powers. And they talk about like maybe in the future they'll have a god again, but right now maybe they just don't need gods, because just let it be a land for, let Fillory be Fillory for a while without some kind of gods deciding. There's still like the questing beast. He brought back the questing deer or whatever. Like, when you see this deer, he gives you a quest and all this kind of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff in this book. Don't let me turn you off to it. You should still read it. And definitely watch the TV show, because the TV show's got so much more to it Uh, yeah, I really enjoyed these. And Lev Grossman apparently started another series that I don't know anything about. And I'm pretty hyped to maybe get that. And I just started reading Empire of the Damned, sequel to the Empire of the Vampire. And I don't know why it's taking me so long to read books nowadays. It's like I'm reading 50 pages a day at most. Where I was reading like 100, 120 pages a day. And there's so many books I want to get to, it's driving me crazy. I've been wanting to go back and read Joe Abercrombie, even though I don't really like Joe Abercrombie as much as everybody else does. But I still got to finish, the Robin Hobb trilogy I'm on. I got to finish Will of the Many, the book that saved the world, the Mark Lawrence book. I want to read Grace of Kings. I got to get back into Sun Eater and want to finish that. I want to get rid of Brian McClellan. I want to read some more him. Got all these authors that I really like that had really good books, like Ryan Cahill. I haven't read Ryan Cahill yet at all. By the way, I got 2 new bookshelves in my living room, and I put all my Stephen King, my Dean Koontzes in there, my Clive Cusslers, my classic novels. A lot of my books are in there now. And I've got 2 fantasy shelves, 1 sci-fi shelf. And I got like an empty shelf down there, and I got an empty shelf and a half over there. So I got some more room if I buy some more books. But my house is pretty much full. I don't have any room to put more bookshelves, I don't think. Unless I get rid of my old computer desk I used to sit at. And put a couple shelves there. Maybe I could turn these ones in my bedroom into corner shelves so they'd be twice as big. But I burned a couch the other day and it stayed on fire for a long time. And I got so many books and old couches in this house that would go up like a tinderbox if any fire caught out here. It's probably not very safe. Anyway, yeah.